Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of Coffee with Leaders from Supply Chain Redefined. And I'm very happy to have a podcast with Steve from Argon Co. Me and Steve have a long relationship. It's been almost 7-8 years of relationship. We have worked with multiple implementations, and I feel he's the right person to talk to him about today's topic, which is KPI. Welcome to our
thank you.
podcast.
I have to toast you for Coffee with Supply Chain Leaders. I love it. Thank you. I'm really excited here. I hope I can live up to the billing.
Yeah. So first, tell me about yourself and also Argon Co.
Sure. Well, Argon Co is a global supply chain consulting firm. We got offices in 18 places around the world, everywhere down in New Zealand, all the way up to Chicago. I mean, everything is pretty much covered except for a little bit of Africa. And we work just in the supply chain. We don't do insurance or anything like that. We're in the supply chain, and that goes everything from procurement, to manufacturing, to distribution, transportation, and we look at help people with the systems that run the supply chain, as well as the operations in themselves, designing operations, designing facilities, and then we also will get into situations where we will help people with strategy. Things like, should I outsource a portion of the supply chain? Or how do I connect my business strategy to my supply chain strategy? So that's Argon. And we've been doing this since like 1992, I think,
wow.
At least in the United States. And now today, we're 750 people worldwide with the hope of being 1,900 in the next 5 years. As far as me, right? As far as my background, I actually got started in supply chain consulting way back. I mean, I'm talking about there were no computers where I got started back in 1987. Over the years, again, I've worked primarily in consulting, although I did have a real job for 3 years. I was a CIO of a $1 billion retail company in Atlanta. My background originally is in systems. That's why I was in IT, but as far as the consulting work I've done, it's been in supply chain, really around the warehouse and the software that runs in the warehouse, designing warehouses. I've also gotten into like emerging technology in warehouses, things we're even going to talk about, drones or machine learning and AI or things. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later because it relates to KPIs. And then more recently, really most of my work is because I've been doing this for a while. It is involved in turning places around that have gone terribly wrong, distribution operations or manufacturing operations. And I think it's a great topic to talk about KPIs and also my background, because I think frequently the reason places really get off track and disasters occur because people don't pay any attention to KPIs, or they don't have KPIs, or they don't know what the KPI, why the KPI is important.
Exactly. Yes, that's the reason of today's topic. And before we go deeper into the topic, first of all, for common audience who is watching our podcast, what is KPI? Good. So that's the first thing.
Great. Well, KPI is an acronym for Key Performance Indicator. And I think in the warehousing context, or the supply chain in general, but certainly in the warehousing context, you usually have key performance indicators for two reasons. You got some that are there, what I call your daily KPIs. These are the ones that you have to watch to make sure that things don't go, everything goes according to plan. You get everything out of the warehouse on time that you're supposed to. Imagine driving a car. It's kind of like the speedometer. You want to make sure you're not driving too fast. But then you also have to worry about longer term KPIs that usually are tied to your bonus or the way your boss is going to evaluate you. These are things like maybe safety incidents or the quality of the work, or how many on-time performance, those kind of things. And so you kind of have a mixture of these short-term things as well as these long-term things that you want to watch. Just like, in your car, your long-term thing is kind of the gas tank. You're going to look at that occasionally, whereas that speedometer, you're looking at all the time to make sure you're not going over the speed limit.
Awesome. My next question is okay, what are all the most critical KPIs that we use for measuring the performance? I know we don't want to have too many KPIs or want to have very less KPIs. So what is how we can measure the exact KPIs that is needed for the enterprise?
That's a great question. Where do those KPIs come from, and what do you look at. Over the years, I think that I've kind of come to the conclusion there's certain kinds of KPIs. You should copy stuff, right? You should copy what other people use. Sometimes those are industry specific, but a lot of times they're kind of generic. I want to put in a plug here for the Warehouse Education Research Council, WORK. They publish every year a series of KPIs and benchmarks where they have gone out and asked companies about the KPIs that they use and what are the scores on those KPIs. For example, I think a really good one that you want to track in a warehouse would be your dock to stock time. That's how fast does it take to get the stuff in. And most places need to be doing that in like 24 hours. But it depends on the industry. I've had also places where it's different. But that's at least something that is acknowledged by WORK as being really important. Another one that you'd find in, say, the WORK report is location accuracy.
Oh, yes. That is very important.
Yeah, you bet. Because a disaster in a warehouse, if you go to a location to pick something and it's not there, right? Then what do? It costs, our studies have shown that it costs anywhere from 5 to 8 times more to pick that correctly and correct it than it does to pick it if it was there to begin with. So I would say start with what your industry typically uses. I would lean on the WORK report also to augment that, because I think there's a lot of good things. Plus, what's really cool about WORK is that you could kind of, if you use a measurement that they already advocate, you could kind of see where you are, whether you're good or bad, because they also publish the benchmark scores along with those.
Awesome. Such a good insight. My next question is, how do companies determine the right KPIs for their objectives, and what are all the things they should avoid?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I think a lot of times the KPIs that you need to track probably start with your industry, and understanding what other people are tracking is really important to building your own suite of KPIs. But you can't go overboard. I think you can't have so many that you can't really follow them. I think most places will have 5 to 6 daily KPIs that they're looking at. And as far as determining which ones are, that again, it's a copy and paste exercise thing a lot of times. But what I will say that's really, really important, and when you talk about pitfalls, things where people make mistakes, I see a lot of times where new management will come into a facility. They'll have a dashboard of things that they're watching. Some of these things they understand. Some of them they're not really sure why they're even on there.
Yes.
And so what happens is they pay attention to the ones they understand, the ones that like pick locations remaining. That's maybe kind of mysterious. And so when things go wrong, like I said before, a lot of the stuff I've done over the years has been work with companies that are operating facilities that have just gone off track. When that's happened, it's because people have just not understood how important certain KPIs were. So I think one of the pitfalls to avoid when choosing your suite, copy and paste, but you also need to know why each one of those things is on your list. And what does it mean if it starts to go, left or right?
Yes.
Because that could be okay, or it could be, oh my gosh, we're in trouble.
That's a good one. Yes. The next question I have is, how do I bring AI into the KPI? Now the entire world is talking about AI. So everywhere you see AI. So how can I bring AI into my KPI metrics? Because AI is one of the interesting areas where we can put it into the KPI and drive efficiency.
Yeah.
So how can we do that?
I think I joked earlier about how when I got into this business, there were no computers, and how computers have just changed everything. I feel the same way about AI. And I think we're going to see that gradually it does change everything as well. As it relates to KPIs, one of the things that AI does is it enables you to have more insight than you can have from traditional metric-driven KPIs. And what am I talking about? For example, in the supply chain in general, not just the warehouse, but in the supply chain in general, most big companies, there's people that monitor the stuff that's coming into the supply chain from manufacturing or vendors, as well as the stuff that's going out. And their job is to kind of monitor that flow to make sure that things are proceeding against plan.
Yes.
And so their whole purpose in life is to try to find things that are not proceeding against plan.
Yes.
That takes a lot of time. I think what we're seeing is AI allows you to start pinpointing where the problems are, and so that the people don't spend as much time just monitoring the problem or looking for problems. They're spending their time more on fixing them, right? I think that's the impact I think that AI is going to have on KPIs. And I could talk to some examples and stuff like that if you want to do that.
Awesome. That's great. And how can the AI help the hidden inefficiencies that operations is having? Okay, this is where my problem is, and this is where I can drive the KPIs. So how can AI help in that aspect?
I think right now, I mean, we're just getting, this is a new area. So, I mean, we're kind of starting just to get into understanding how AI can be applied in the supply chain. Where I'm seeing the most success is not so much around improving efficiency of the supply. It does to some degree. I shouldn't say it doesn't. But really where it's really making impact is in service. And let me give you an example of where that is. Recently, I sat through a conversation I had with a vice president that oversees the supply chain for a distributor. This distributor has thousands and thousands of parts, and they actually have thousands of suppliers too. I mean, they order just a little bit from all these other people, and then of course they aggregate and sell to their customers. What he said is that, before I used AI in my supply chain monitoring exercise, some people call it the glass pipeline. You also hear some people call it my supply chain control tower. Mm-hmm. Before I had AI, what I was doing is I had one person responsible for just watching this part of my supply chain, another person watching this part of the supply chain. And what would happen is their job was to say, okay, is everything on time? Is everything proceeding? Okay, it's supposed to be picked up on this time. It's supposed to be dropped off at the port at this time. It's supposed to be on the water outside of Hawaii by 300 miles by this time, et cetera, stuff like that. So these people are watching thousands of shipments, and they're trying to figure out not where is stuff not proceeding according to plan. And when do I really need to get involved? And you would think, okay, well, if you miss a date, that should immediately be a problem. Well, there's tons of things where they miss a day here and there. The issue is usually you would have to have some instinct that you would apply to say, okay, I've missed a day here, I've missed a day here. I know that carrier historically is never on time that it goes to next. So I think it's very likely it's going to miss the import date. There's a lot of expert knowledge that goes into making that assessment of, am I in trouble or not? It's not just looking at the date. Well, the AI steps in, and that really starts to capture that expert's insight into, is this likely to be a late shipment or not?
Yes.
So what's different now? Well, the distributor told me, I think he said something like 75% of the time formerly was spent by his planners and his supply chain monitors just trying to find the problems in the supply chain.
Awesome.
Now they're focused, like 25% of their time is finding the problem, because AI points you there. They're spending most of their time fixing it.
Yes.
So things are now on time. The inventory levels have gone down because now they have more certainty around the replenishment process. So they've got, inventory savings. They've also had some savings in terms of efficiency, because you can imagine if you're expecting something to show up at the warehouse today and you're going to have a bunch of stuff, then you're going to hire a bunch of, temporaries to come in and deal with it. Well, what happens if it's late? Will they be standing around, playing tiddlywinks or, making boxes or something?
Every minute is dollars, right?
Exactly. You got it. So now they can say for certain, but much more certainty that the stuff is actually showing up. So AI is going to make a big difference, I think. First in service, I think later on it is going to have an impact on efficiency. I mean, I think when you start introducing AI to manage operations and with the idea of keeping KPIs in mind, I need to keep utilization up of my people, above 85%, then AI can start moving people around in the warehouse. I think that is where you'll see the impact in efficiency. Right now, I think it's a lot around service and inventory levels. But
awesome. That's well said. That's.
I'm sorry I just dragged on there for a while, but
that's awesome. Actually, I love this the conversation. And the thing is, my next question is, can you share a few examples or industries that you have used AI to enhance the efficiency to our audiences, and also how can the future onboarding, if any customer wants AI in their KPIs, how can we help to get their KPIs automated with APIs, and how can we help them?
Sure. We have at Argon, we've got a group in Paris that's called Iris, and these are a bunch of what they call data scientists, not analysts, but scientists. These are guys that understand machine learning, AI application, that kind of stuff. The first thing I'm finding out as I work with these people is that AI is not something. It's not something you just buy out of the box. You have to train the AI on the decisions that you want it to make, and you have to kind of architect. So every time you apply AI to the supply chain, there's going to have to be a lot of kind of scientific engineering to make it work. So it's kind of like a little custom program for every kind of problem. The thing then becomes, where have we seen this applied? I got to tell you a story. It was really cool. When you have one KPI that you frequently will see is the amount of time it should take to perform a task in a warehouse, like pick an order or build a kit, right? Well, I had the opportunity to work with a very large manufacturer of tools, which I won't name, that builds display kits for Home Depot, for their tools. Their tools end up being put in a nice little display. You probably walked in Home Depot, you've seen, we've got these tools on sale, right? They've got a drill and a saw and some other things, and they're all on sale. Well, those displays are custom. And they wanted, the tool company wanted to be able to establish an expectation or a labor standard, a labor KPI, right? For building one display, because then they could hold the workers accountable for building it. The problem with that is every display is different.
Yes.
Everyone. I mean, sometimes it's wide, sometimes it depends on what you're going to put in it, depends on kind of the graphics, how many shelves you want to put in it.
I needed to put the right tools in.
Sometimes if you're putting a lot of little, batteries, that takes a lot more work than if you're putting in big saws into the display. So I started looking at it, I said, if everyone is different, how do we build a labor standard? Because every day the labor standard is going to be different. How do we get, I got on the phone, I called Paris and I explained the problem. And the guy asked me, he says, okay, well, what do they have to guide the workers with building that display? And I said, well, they just have this little PDF file that has all these pictures of how you're supposed to fold things and put them into the display. He says, well, send that to me. So I sent it to him. He goes, it looks like every time they have to do a fold, I can see there's a little arrow in every shelf that has to go in. I can see where I can see it on the drawing, and they seem to be consistent with that. I think AI can pick up the number of shelves you got to put into it. I can see all the folds. That's the other part of labor, and then I can see all the actual individual pieces. I think, Steve, we can actually use AI to identify from the PDF all the tasks that are going to be necessary to build this thing. I said, no way. I said, how long do you think it would take you to build something like it? Because I want to tell the client about it. He goes, let me see. He went off. He came back. He says, I got a working prototype. And it was only a day.
Wow. That's
so I tell you this because I think KPIs will have to be, AI will impact KPIs, but everyone will be a little bit different. You have to have a little bit of customization, just like the guy had to kind of build the prototype for it. But I think the promise that they offer us is that they can do things that we have just not been able to do before. They can detect really seriously likely to be late orders better than humans probably can. They can estimate how long it's going to take to fold things and build custom displays where we couldn't have ever done that before. It just would have been economical to let an engineer do it. There's going to be a lot of those kind of applications for AI and KPIs together to do things and measure things that we can't do today. And just as kind of closing, I mean, the importance here of all this stuff is that you can't manage anything you can't measure, right? That's the old adage, exactly. And it is so true. And so as AI kind of steps in and we can measure more things and measure them more accurately, I think operations will get more efficient and they'll be better performing and on time, better customer service will come out of these operations.
Yes, because more we use the KPI, more we drive efficiency, that will help operations a lot. And also AI is one of the area where supply chain still entering into supply chain domain.
Just getting started.
But there are a lot of rooms for improvement. And for sure, people like you and me can help the supply chain drive KPI efficiency with the help of AI.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a whole new world that's coming.
Thank you. It's nice talking to you, Steve.
Prabhu, as always, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed being here too.